So for Valentine's, there's a couple that they went out to a taco place. You can guess which one. And they went out to this taco place, and they're sitting down for their nice Valentine's date. And it felt like the entire time the two were just missing each other. Like they weren't getting it. They weren't receiving love. They weren't feeling anything in this relationship. It was one of the worst dates ever. Why are relationships so hard? And I'm not just talking romantic relationships. I'm talking all kinds of relationships. I'm talking about your relationship with your friends. I'm talking about relationships between kids and their parents. I'm talking about relationships between siblings. Why are relationships so hard? Have you ever had this experience where you try to lean in and you try to connect with someone, but they don't seem to receive your love? Or maybe it's the opposite for you. You have a person that says that they love you. They say they care about you, but they don't act like it. What's going on there? Well, what if the two of you are speaking different love languages? You might have heard about this concept of love languages before, and right now we're in a series called What If? What if your life got better this year? What if you could live the life that God created you for? And specifically right now, what if your relationships got healthier because you learned to speak and hear other love languages? Here's what I'm wondering about. See, often when we're in these relationships that aren't working well, arguments pop up, right? But what if the difficulty in relationships is not just about the present argument? What if the real difficulty is that you haven't been receiving love from them and they haven't been receiving love from you? Not that neither one's trying, but that the message isn't getting through. That you're having arguments right now. It might be with a coworker. It might be with a friend. It might be with a spouse. It might be with any of these relationships. But if that argument that you're having right now were resolved, a new one would just spring up. It doesn't even matter because you're not hearing each other's love. The concept of this is called a love bank. It was the term was coined of a love bank by Dr. William Harley. But the idea is that if you don't feel loved, if your love bank is empty, if the other person hasn't successfully put deposits into your love bank, and that love bank just calculates how loved you feel by that person, then arguments are going to spring up. And on the other side of it, this is amazing. I've watched this happen in my own life and the lives of people around me. Once you feel loved, even without solving the disagreement, the arguments just dissolve themselves. How do you make deposits in someone's love bank? Well, Gary Chapman put an idea together about this called love languages. You may have read the book, but the idea is if you speak the other love language, you put deposits in their love bank the way that they will receive and they will hear. That's the secret. That's the key. That's how you make deposits. You can't put deposits in your own love language if it doesn't match theirs, because it won't be worth as much. Now, what are the love languages? You might be wondering, and here's the best way I know to explain it. Love languages are like tacos. Okay, there's 5 love languages: words of affirmation, acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, and physical touch. These are the 5 ways that people show love. And let me just explain how this works. Words of affirmation, you show love to someone with compliments, right? You could say, your tacos are delicious. That's words of affirmation. Here's another one. Acts of service. I made you tacos. You're giving, it's not so much about the gift, it's so much of what you did to show love to the other person. Now, if it's about the gift, though, then it could be, here is a taco. You see, there's overlap here. And this isn't a science, but it's a way of thinking about how do you show love and the way the other person's going to appreciate. The next one, quality time. Let's go out for tacos together. I like that one. Let's go out for tacos together. And here's my favorite, the fifth one, physical touch. Let me hold you like a taco. But seriously, though, people receive love in different ways. Some people need to know that you affirm them, that you value them, that you see something of worth in them. Other people, they need to know, they need to see you take action and do something, an act of service. And you could give all the compliments you want. You could say, oh, you're doing an excellent job loading the dishes, when the person really what they want is for you to jump in and do the dishes. That's what's going to show love. And some people, they need those gifts to be given. Some people need that quality time. And with all of these different love languages, all of them, the power of it is to pay attention to what the other person needs and to give that. Now there's the opposite side here, right? There's the harm languages, right? The opposite of each of these. If you tear down the other person, it removes deposits from their love bank. It's like you're sticking your hand in their love bank and you're pulling out deposits that you previously made. You're going to run into the negative. And some of you, you're thinking right now, shoot, yeah, I see why my relationship's not working. And truly, any of these would probably be a withdrawal from anyone's love bank. But for the people that's their primary love language, oh boy, it's going to be a devastating withdrawal. Distracted time together. If they value quality time, and instead what you give them is time sitting next to you while you're on your phone, yeah, you're not doing quality time. It's not net zero either. You are removing from their love bank. If their love language is acts of service, and instead you make life harder for them, guess what? You're removing from their love bank. Thoughtless gifts. If they love meaningful gifts, and instead you give them a gift card to McDonald's, and they don't like fast food, guess what? Guess what? You would have been better off eating that Big Mac yourself. Here's another one. Their love language is physical touch. A hug, an embrace, a handshake, a high five. And instead you use touch that hurts, that wounds. It makes a withdrawal. But it's not just about things that you do that hurt. It's about abandonment as well. If they need words of affirmation, but you just give them silence. If they need quality time together, but instead you avoid spending time together. If they need acts of service, but you just refuse to help. If they need gifts to show love. And let me be really clear about gifts, what that's about. These gifts, it's not about the expensive $10,000 diamond ring. No, this is about the macaroni necklace. This is about the thoughtfulness. But if you don't give anything at all, it says, I don't love you. It's a withdrawal from the love bank. If they need hugs and you say, oh, I'm not a touchy person, it takes away from the relationship. I believe that when it comes to relationships, God is the expert. Listen to what Jesus says, God in the flesh, about relationships. He was asked, what's the most important thing? What's the most important commandments to live the life God made us for? What's essential? And he says there's two of them. First of all, love the Lord your God with every bit of your being. And here's the second. He says, the second is like it. You must love your neighbor as yourself. You must love your neighbor as yourself. Let me ask you, do you want others to love you in a way that you can hear? Then you've got to love them in the way that they can hear. Can you identify your love language? Like right now, can you identify the love language that when it's spoken, it means the most to you? One of the easiest ways of identifying it is to recognize what you most wish the people around you would do, right? What is you long for? What is that when they don't do it, when that's missing, you say, I don't know if I'm really loved. For you, it might be words of affirmation. You need that. You need the people in your life to affirm you. That's how they show you that they love you. Others, you say, no, they got to show it with some actions. They've got to do something. I'm so frustrated when I'm left with all this all by myself. Others, it's receiving gifts. Others, it's quality time. And others, it's that physical touch. What is it that means the most to you? One way of knowing is paying attention to what's the way you try and show love to others. I know some people, I'm 100% sure, their primary love language is gift giving. You know why? Because they are always finding special, unique gifts that fit so perfectly for that person. These are the people that love Christmas because that's the holiday. They can give gifts, and they come up with just the right gift for each person. For others, that's not it, right? For others, you give them a gift and they say, well, thanks. It's not quite what they were needing, but they appreciate the thought, right? What's the love language you most rarely speak? And would you just type that in the chat right now? There's something powerful about naming what your love language is. You know, Jesus spoke in other people's love languages. Let's just highlight two of them right now. Words of affirmation. The person who needs words of affirmation, they long to know what you respect and affirm about them. And one time, there is this woman who everyone else in the community, they wanted to judge her. And she came to Jesus. And what she did, she anointed Jesus with perfume. It's a way of honoring people at that time and place. And people were criticizing. They were whispering, what is she doing that's so wasteful? And Jesus said in front of the whispering crowd, you have done a beautiful thing. There's this public sense in which to everyone around and to her, he wanted them all to know this affirmation, this thing she saw, that he saw in her. And for you, if your love language is words of affirmation, I hope you know God sees the beautiful things that you do. God looks at you. Here, this is scripture. God looks at you and says, you are wonderfully made. You are a masterpiece. You are a work of art. And that's how God sees you. That's the truth. As you continue to walk with Jesus and let Jesus shape your life, more and more God's just saying, yes, I see this masterpiece in you. Another time in Luke 7, a Roman centurion approached Jesus. This is a Roman soldier, and someone close to him was sick. And Jesus was on his way to the centurion's home to heal him. You know, it sounds like gift giving right there, giving him the gift of healing this person in his life. But before Jesus got there, the centurion says to Jesus, you don't need to come inside to my home. I know what a social thing that is in this culture. I know that Jews don't even associate with Romans, let alone a Roman centurion, the occupiers. I appreciate that you're healing this person in my life. And I know that you can give the command from where you stand, and the healing will happen. And Jesus announced to everyone within earshot, many of them are Jews, everyone within earshot, and says, even in Israel, I have not found faith like this. He's letting everyone know these cultural divisions, that's not the way God sees the world. And he's saying even more than that. He's saying, look at this person. Look at his faith. To say that I can make this happen from where I stand. And Jesus did. That's words of affirmation. Jesus showed quality time to people too. And quality time, it's about undivided attention. It's about not multitasking. This is something I have to work on as a parent of a 4-year-old, because so easily I pull out my phone, I'm thinking about something else. And what quality time is It's putting down the phone, silencing your smartwatch, going on a walk together, making a meal together, playing a game together, doing one thing at a time and just focusing on that other person. That's quality time. Jesus did this with his 12 disciples. He did quality time with them. He sure did talk to the crowds. He knew the crowds, but he spent quality time with the disciples. They ate together. They walked on their journey together. They had life together. Now I wonder, do you have those people that you're like, yeah, I spend quality time with them. I do life with them in your own house and even beyond. Jesus sat down for dinner with every kind of person in the cities he visited, and it got him into so much trouble because he was showing them love. He was showing love to the stuck-up people. He was showing love to the tax collectors who were supporting the Romans. He was showing love to the lowest of the low. And that time was as divided as ours. That got him in trouble because he was showing love, and they knew that was love. Quality time. Well, after Jesus' resurrection, before Jesus ascended into heaven, he gave his promise to everyone who follows them. Listen to this promise. I myself will be with you every day until the end of this present age. And I don't know if your love language is quality time. It might be. And if it is, even if it's not, I want you to know Jesus promises to be with you every day until the end of this present age, which really just means until Jesus returns and sets everything right on this earth, at which point Jesus is still with us every day. You know, it's your responsibility to speak love to your neighbor. God gave you that responsibility. The two greatest commandments, Jesus said, love the Lord your God with everything in your being and love your neighbor as myself. A neighbor. When someone once asked Jesus, who's my neighbor? Jesus came back with a story with a point at the end. The point was this. Who are you being neighborly to? Are you being a neighbor? And so if someone hears love by words of affirmation, I'm just going to tell you, speak those words of affirmation to them. If someone feels love from you, if you spend quality time with them, then by all means, sit down with them. Spend some quality time, have a meal together, work on a project together, and have it be about the together, not about the project. If someone finds value and being shown acts of service, then do something meaningful for them. If they love receiving gifts, then pick out something thoughtful. If they show love and receive love by physical touch, then give them a hug. Now you might say, I'm not a gift-giving person. It's not about whether you're a gift-giving person. It's about speaking the other person's love language. And Jesus says, love your neighbor the way you want to be loved. You want people to speak your language, speak their language. Love your neighbor as yourself. But I'm not a dishwashing person. Figure it out. I'm not an encouraging person. Figure out how to speak the words. It doesn't come naturally to me. You know what? It won't. I learned pretty early in my marriage. My spouse and I spoke different love languages. Like not even close. It was surprising to me the day I realized all the things that she was doing to show me love that I didn't even get. I didn't even understand. Oh, that was the show me love. It didn't even register. But over time, you know what I figured out? Those things are loving. Those are the ways that she shows love naturally, most naturally, without even thinking about it, just feeling her love for me. And so I learned to hear and receive love in the language she's saying. Here's the other side. She's learning and I'm learning. Our partner receives love in another language. So let's speak that language. Let's do that in order to show the kinds of love that they're going to most easily receive, that's going to put the biggest deposits into their love bank. I'm going to ask you today, pick one person who you are called to love. It might be a friend, it might be a neighbor, it might be one of your kids, it might be one of your parents, it might be a sibling, it might be your spouse, it might be a coworker. Can you identify their language? Can you identify it? Can you figure it out? Is it words of affirmation? Is it quality time? Is it acts of service? Do they love receiving gifts? Is it physical touch? And then decide your one next step. What's one loving thing you can do in their language? If you don't know their language, guess. It's pretty easy to watch what happens afterwards and see, was that the right one? If it doesn't hit right, try a different one. Choose one way that you're going to love differently this week. I'm going to pray for you as you do that. God, I ask that this person here that's listening today, that's seeking to follow you, I ask that you will give them the wisdom to know how to love the people in their lives, and give them the courage to experiment and to try again when they fail. And God, I pray for the people in this world around us. You've placed us into numerous relationships with friends and relatives, even our acquaintances, and our neighbors who live right next door, and our coworkers. You've placed us into these relationships, and we ask that you lead us to show your love in ways that draw people to you. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. You know, we are called to do this individually, but we're also called to love our neighbor together. And here's something I'm going to ask you to consider doing. I'm going to ask you to step out in faith to do this with me. If you happen to know some other people who are a part of Grace, who are either they're with Grace online or they're in person, and they're in your local community, I'm going to ask that you partner with them. You call a couple of them up, you send them a text, you message them, and you contact them and say, let's do something fun together. You talked about quality time. Jesus showed quality time. He had life with people. I'm asking you to do life with a couple people. I'm asking you to hang out with them. A couple people that you're like, I would not hate hanging out with you. If you're in a small group already, do this with your small group. But what I'm going to ask you to do is do this with a couple people. Pick an activity, pick a day and time, pick an activity you're going to do together. Maybe you'll eat supper together. You can do that together on Zoom. That's a thing. You can have a game night. You can plan a movie night. You can go to a basketball game. You pick what is it that you're going to do. And then each one of you invites someone else to join you. And someone else, particularly someone who doesn't go to church at Grace. Here's what I mean. You can say something like this. Some friends of mine from church are getting together to blank, whatever you want it to be. And I would love it if you would come as my guest. It's pretty simple. Some friends of mine from church are getting together to blank, and I would love it if you would come as my guest. And the way you do this might be different. You might do it with quality time. You know that's implicit. That's implied in there. You might think about these love languages and say, I'm going to go a step further. They might really appreciate a gift. And so I was going to say, I'm going to even buy your ticket, right? Some friends of mine from church are getting together to go to a basketball game, to go to a movie. I'm going to buy your ticket. Wow, that's loving, right? Especially if your love language is gifts. Maybe you're talking to someone, you think their love language is acts of service. I've got someone I know like that. And you might say, some friends of mine from church are getting together to go to to have a game night, and I'm going to pick you up. I'm going to do the act of service. I'm going to pick you up. You don't have to say it's an act of service, but they'll feel that. I'm going to pick you up. Someone you might say, it's a word of affirmation that means the most to them. This is out of my comfort zone, but I'm going to go for it. I'm going to say some friends of mine from church are getting together to play some board games or eat supper, and I would love it if you'd come as my guest because you're really fun to hang out with. Oh, you're giving them a compliment. That might feel hard for you. It might feel uncomfortable because it's an act of love, right? And yet, it means something to people. It means something. And here's why I believe. As we show love to one another and the people in this community, more people will be drawn to Jesus. And when people are drawn to Jesus, this whole world will be transformed. I pray that as you go forth and do this, you experience God's grace in your life, and you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that in God's eyes, you are loved.
Hey, this is Ashley from Grace Ottumwa. I'm praying you had a meaningful encounter with Jesus during this message. If this message impacted you in a positive way, we'd love to hear about it in our Facebook group, Grace Ottumwa Church Online. You can support Grace by subscribing to Grace Ottumwa's YouTube channel. If you'd like to support Grace Ottumwa's mission, you can give online at graceottumwa.org/give.